some of the basics of using the Tempera Paint. You're going to need a container of paint for your table. You're going to need some paintbrushes, of course your drawing. You're going to need one of these little paint mixers. Each person should have a paper towel to work with while you're painting. And then you're going to need something to mix the paint on. So I have these catalogs that we can use, and you're just going to open it up, and from the corner just tear off a page to mix the paint on. I'm actually, for this video, gonna mix the paint on this so you can see what I'm doing better. Before we start painting, we probably need to mix our colors first. So you should have drawn the same thing 4 times on yours. I actually drew one that had a bunch of different things, so I can show you some different techniques. So I'm gonna go ahead and start by getting some paint. You don't need a whole lot, probably like a quarter size. That's all you really need, because we're only gonna paint one section of this, so we don't need a whole lot of paint. But I do need to mix some color. When I'm doing this, I'm making sure not to put the tip of the paint in there so it doesn't contaminate the paint in the bottle. Wipe this off with a paper towel. Go ahead and mix my purple. And then a lot of you are probably going to need some browns. So to mix browns, we're going to use our color wheel. Any complementary colors, that is colors that are opposite of each other, if you mix those together, they're going to make brown. So blue and orange will make a brown, yellow and purple will make a brown, and then red and green. So I'm just going to take some of this purple, and I'm just going to start mixing it with the yellow. Notice I'm just mixing it to the side. That way, if I need to adjust the color at all, like I can see that it's looking a little green. So opposite of green is red. And since I used magenta for this purple, I'm going to use magenta. This is probably the part that takes the longest, is to try to mix your colors up. Pretty good brown, I think. You don't really want to use your paintbrush to mix the colors too much, because you can damage the paintbrush. Because if you get paint all the way up into this metal part, the ferrule, it'll mess up the bristles as it dries. So we don't want to do that. I'm going to go ahead and start with this flower. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. And so I'm just going to start by painting the flower. The flower is pretty yellow, so I'm going to start with yellow and just kind of paint my petals first. And you don't need a whole lot of paint. You don't want it too gloppy. We're just going to start with a thin layer first. And part of the brush to get those really sharp points for the petals. I'm just going to slow down to do the points. Flower done, I'm going to wipe off my brush a little bit, and then I'm going to go and start on the stem. I think I'll go ahead and do the inside of that sunflower, which is mostly brown. Starting with is just kind of a base layer of color. And then I'll probably go in and go ahead and do this this background green, but I don't want to make it too close to the green that I already have. So most of the background is a little bit darker. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a little more blue to my green. And I'm just going to do that on the edge right here to get a little bit darker green. These little parts by the flower, I can use this small brush to get in these little sections. Got around like this little section of the flower and the stem, like the parts that I had to be careful on, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to switch brushes to this flat brush, because then I can work a little bit faster. And that green does not go all the way up. There's some sky there. So I'm going to go ahead and take some blue. Let's put it right here. I'll make sure this brush is really clean. And then I'm going to go ahead and add the sky in. Basically the base color down. I'm going to go in while that sky is still a little bit wet, and I'm going to add some white for these clouds here. I'm just going to kind of dab it on. The more you dab, the more it's going to blend in, as long as your blue is still wet. So you don't want to dab too much, just enough to kind of get it to look a little bit softer and more cloud-like. Now I'm going to go in and kind of add some finer details to my flower. So I'm going to go back to my round brush. I'm going to make sure it's pretty clean using a paper towel. And then I'm going to use a little bit of a lighter brown for the petals. So to do that, I'm going to get some white, and I'm just going to come up right to the edge of my brown. And then I'm going to probably add a little yellow. A little bit darker than the yellow I already used for my flower. And then I can kind of go in and add some lines. I'm not really pushing on my brush at all. I'm just barely touching the paper so that I can get thinner lines. And then I think I want a little bit of a darker brown to kind of add some texture to this flower. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of this darker blue and kind of mix this in. Now I'm going to go in with this darker brown, and I'm just going to use the tip of my brush and kind of make some dots on the middle of the sunflower to kind of make that texture. So I'm also looking at my picture as I'm painting this, and I'm noticing there's kind of a highlight right here that kind of looks like a half moon shape. So I'm going to, as I do this, kind of go around like a half moon shape so that I am not painting the highlighted part. And I can actually go in with probably some yellow to kind of get that highlight in the middle. And I'm just going to keep doing the same thing, looking at my picture, looking and saying, okay, there's a highlight right there on the stem. So I'm going to add some yellow right here to the stem. And this is where you can kind of use your brush a little bit, because I'm not dipping my whole brush in the paint, but I'm going to get some of this darker green and just kind of add it to this color I already have, just to make it a little bit darker so that I can go in and kind of add like the veins of this leaf. And then to make this look kind of like it is in the photo where it's blurry, I'm just going to take some of this kind of darker green, and in some spots where I see darker colors, I'm just going to kind of dab it in there and kind of blend it in. I'm also going to go in and kind of put all these sunflowers in the background just by taking some yellow on my brush and kind of dabbing in some bright yellow spots. Them look more like sunflowers. I'm going to add those brown dots in. You can use your paintbrush. You can also use the back of your paintbrush to just kind of dip into the brown with the back of my paintbrush, and then I can just get a pretty good circle that way. So that's how you use tempera paint. You're going to try to get rid of all that white. I painted a little a little fast just so that you guys didn't have to watch this quite so long. But you should not have flat color on your painting. You should build up the values. So I started with the lightest value first, the yellow, and then I went in with some browns to kind of add some dimension and depth to my painting.